Nope.
Put that away and stare at this really depressing map.
Welcome to the End of Days podcast for It Began in the Basement. Oh god.
Indeed. Welcome to It Began in the Basement. While we may be watching the End of Days, we were going to talk about what I like to call PhD, which is post-Halloween depression, which might be PED soon, which will be post-election depression. It's a Tuesday, 11:47, November 8th. It is a close race. It is stressful. So we're going to talk about things that are less stressful, such as a town that's been on fire for how many years?
Want to say if memory serves since the 40s or the 50s? That whole thing is just a non-stop story of bureaucracy screwing the pooch.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's back up a little bit. In our last episode, we did a couple stories for Halloween, but we didn't really discuss them because we were on opposite ends of the state. So Laura, in her wonderful scripting, didn't tell us about her actual trip to Centralia.
I'm a genius. Yeah. I don't know about you. But the actual trip itself was really rather great because it was my mother's birthday weekend, so I took her out for dinner in the same town that my editor friend Rosa actually worked in the library in, so it was kind of a serendipitous overlap, and it's a beautiful little town, Orwigsburg. And as we got out there, the sun was starting to set. I had messaged you around that time.
Yeah. You're like, it's going to be dark out. Do I take pictures of the flash? I don't know. I'm not
there. How do I give you the best material and that you won't hate me for working on it? Anyway, so we finally get out there and the sky is just lavender and dark purple, and my phone could not take accurate pictures of that kind of color, and it depressed me to no end. But we finally get up on the leg that Centralia is right off on, called Big Mine Run Road. You know you're in coal country when?
Really?
So we finally get up there, and I got some of those, there was still this, where my mom's headlights were useful, because accidental ooky spooky lighting, like sure, why not? She actually had flashlights with her, so we finally pull up, and as the sun is starting to set, and you pull into Centralia, the first thing you see is the one house I took a picture of that I showed you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful house, like it's very well kept, but what you see is what I call the blacktop skeleton, because you know how this development, for example, is laid out. It's it was built with residences in mind, obviously. So Centralia itself, that layout is very much there, but with the fact that there's no houses, it just gives you this creepy, crawly feeling up the back of your neck.
Now, were the houses demolished, or did they fall in, or were they just neglected? What happened to them?
If memory serves, when the state claimed that land as eminent domain and everybody, was bought out of their houses or they moved out voluntarily, the state demolished all the houses. I mean, there's no reason to keep them up, because no one can live there.
It costs money to do that.
The state's spending money. Who knew?
Okay, alright, never mind.
Yeah,
I mean, if it was anything like PennDOT, shouldn't it have taken them about, 10 years to get to it, and then...
Yeah, so, I mean, I would still be interested to see the legal logistics for, I think you had mentioned this originally, and that has stuck with me since, that there are a handful of people, I think 7 now, that still reside there, and they're allowed to remain because they sued for their right to do so until they pass away, but I don't know if those rights extend to their children at all. From what I read, no.
It doesn't sound like, I think it sounds like they just want to knock it down and be done with it.
Yeah, it's just a very cut and dry, your mother lived here when she dies, that's it. So I commend the people that sued for the right to stay. Maybe not the physically healthiest option, but the state's like, well, okay. So we were wandering around a little bit, and as the sun finally sets, and it did so a little prematurely because it's just super hilly up in that part of PA, I feel it's even a little bit more hilly than here, which is saying something.
That is weird.
Yeah, but also coal mining country, so to be fair.
Well, if it all sinks, it'll eventually be level.
It's one way of thinking about it. So the sun finally sets, and there's this little strip of parking where we see, maybe 1 or 2 other cars pulled up. So Mom's like, all right, we can stop and take a look around. And as I'm looking out into the darkness, I see what I think are fireflies originally. Thinking about it, I'm like, this is the weekend before Halloween. No way. And then we see these people come out of the darkness, and it's the lights from their flashlights. And originally, I wanted to ask, what was down there to see. And we were both kind of hesitant because people in the dark, and
Yeah.
And then there was a guy that we saw, he had a cockapoo or something like that. So it's like, okay, no, it's probably fine.
If this guy who's clearly vulnerable is
yeah,
okay.
so he was super nice, and he said that he's from about a half an hour outside of the area, and he pointed out where there's a couple abandoned cemeteries, and there was the one that was used mostly for the town that we did not find that trip, but also it was super muddy out, and I'd love to go back there during the daytime, even in the middle of winter. That'd be really cool. Anyway, so we found one cemetery, and I can't remember the name of it offhand, but half of the cemetery wasn't used. There is probably a very explainable reason for this, but my ooky spooky part of myself wants to say that the town started having the flames under it before they could fill it.
Yeah.
I mean, because cemetery itself doesn't look all that old.
But you have to wonder, like, if you're burying something 6 feet deep, how long until those fires kind of eat away at the underneath and they drop?
That was something I had not thought of before. Unfortunately, given that it was super muddy and everything, we didn't get to see the abandoned stretch of highway that's down there. But apparently it's still absolutely walkable as a path. I should note that people who go wandering around in Centralia, you can drive through there because it's the main thoroughfare between Ashland and another town. But if you're walking around on that land, it's technically trespassing on state land. With that being said, I think the general attitude, and I could be wrong about this, but the general attitude is just walk around, enjoy nature, don't litter, don't spray paint things. And I did love those pictures that I got of that one small group of trees that had spray paint all over them. Like, in the dark with the flashlight, it looks really cool, but at the same time, that just kind of is a shame still, because it's, maybe the state wouldn't mind people visiting Centralia so much if people didn't ruin literally everything.
And we're going to post these pictures on our Facebook, so if you do want to see the pictures that Laura's talking about, look up It Began in the Basement on Facebook, and you can see everything that she took pictures of with her mom's headlights.
And it's great, and I love it.
But other thing I'd like to talk about is, in general, when you do this kind of urban exploring, there are some risks. Trespassing is one of them. The state might just kind of chase you off, but a bigger issue is if it's someone else's private property.
Yes,
especially in a state like Pennsylvania where the guns have guns.
Absolutely. And I think
being shot at.
yeah, that would certainly be interesting. So what do you do in Centralia? Well, we barely escaped with our lives. Like, it's fine.
But it actually wasn't the town. It was just the residents.
These 7 residents.
The 7 residents.
Overall, I would really recommend exploring places where urban decay is happening. Because while absolutely there are risks, another one that's super important to note, especially because the cottage that my family owns up in Canada, right up the hill, there is a boarded up house that, standing by itself, no one has bothered to demolish since maybe the 70s when the owner died, so it's been standing by itself since then. Do I absolutely want to go in there and explore? And no one would probably care? Absolutely. But rotting wood.
There is a
collapse.
Big chance you can fall through. The other thing when you're exploring, if you're exploring indoors, a lot of these older houses may have asbestos or something else in the air, so a respirator is a must. If you're not a small person, you could go through the floor.
Yes.
It's a possibility that could happen. The other thing you're going to have to worry about are people who are staying there, squatters or homeless people. And it depends on the person. Some people know they're not supposed to be there and it'll be kind of chill. But if you see kind of a little nest where someone has magazines or personal care items, it's probably in your best interest not to mess with it and to just keep going and just be aware that, well, somebody is not legally staying there, it is their home and they may defend it.
That is absolutely a good point. Kind of back to the fear of collapsing ground, collapsing floors kind of thing. It reminds me of that story that I had dug up where that 12-year-old kid had, what he had seen was wisps of smoke or steam coming out from underneath a tree. Naturally, you're gonna be kind of like, hey, what's going on here? And it goes over and the ground collapses. That makes me wonder if that stretch of road stretching through Centralia is actually going to remain stable indefinitely. You know, I'm sure the state would implement a reroute if necessary.
Well, are the signs kind of like enter at your own risk?
Mm-mm.
No.
That main stretch that you drive through? Nope.
No, but it's like just the other ones road. Around, like, are they?
Oh yeah,
posted,
there's a lot of like no trespassing signs and that kind of thing, and of course the no trespassing signs are spray painted all over. But there are signs that I've heard rumored about, but I didn't see because we weren't in an area where there was still smoke or steam coming out of the ground. But apparently, with lower hanging foliage, during the spring, what can happen with the smoke coming out of the ground around those areas is that the gases can stay there and kind of ferment in a way. So it becomes a highly concentrated issue. The kid that fell into that sinkhole, if his cousin hadn't rescued him, he would have died due to exposure to carbon monoxide poisoning. So that's just an ongoing thing. And I'm just... I realized on the drive up here that while Silent Hill, you know, being modeled after Centralia, at least visually, makes a lot of sense, and it's a very cool idea, I imagined an alternate Silent Hill where it was just about bureaucracy screwing the pooch. How boring.
Yeah. Now, did you play the games or see the movies or?
Oh man, I've seen one of the movies. I think the original.
That's okay. You don't need to see the second one. Second one's not that good.
Yeah, that was one of those few movies that gave me nightmares for weeks.
Really?
Yeah, but I'm also super squishy about that kind of thing. But I'm super squishy about very oddly specific things. That's one of them. Yeah, for somebody that didn't really grow up super hooked into the Silent Hill franchise, I was one of the first people I knew being like, yeah, it's Centralia. Silent Hill is 2 hours from where I lived back east. And I absolutely maintain that we should somehow take a trip out there and just bring giant spooky booth
well, once I
with us.
construct my travel van, it won't be a problem because I can just take him with me.
That's true. Spoopy booth,
that's the idea.
mobile.
Yeah, I can just stay in my van like a person who stays in their van. But, yeah, I mean, the Silent Hill franchise, it was one of the first games that really kind of played on spooky survival horror in that way. And, of course, you're working with PlayStation 1 at that point when it comes out. So the graphics now, I can't play it. Like, if I see it now, it's mostly fog, I think, because they don't want to render things that are that far away. It's still spooky. It's a puzzle game. But in these abandoned towns, there's always the worry that someone will be there who isn't supposed to, and the things that'll kind of play with your mind are monsters. I highly recommend the series of games. My personal favorite is the third one. They're all over the place, but the main thing that ties them together is that it's a town that something horrible happened in, whereas in Centralia it was just something stupid.
Basically, yeah. What did you like so much about the third Silent Hill game?
I am a sucker for anything with a female protagonist.
Of course.
The graphics were also good enough to kind of get engaged with. By the time I got to PlayStation 2, I needed something that was a little less polygon to really kind of get into it. Yeah. I can progress through it pretty quickly, so I guess that's the other thing, is I've played it so many times that it's just, if I play it again, it's just like an exercise in going through it. The endings are good. The enemy is good. It was spooky enough a couple times where I had to like pause the game and like walk around for a little bit to and then settle down and be like, all right, okay, I'm going to go through and do this. The puzzles were the right level of challenging. They didn't like really hold me up that long, but I still felt like a smarty pants when I solved them. And overall, it was just a good story. It has a lot of my favorite horror elements in it, aside from having the town. Anything with shopping malls, which it has. I love that. And amusement parks, I'm thrilled with. So for me, it's a nice little smorgasbord of things I like to see in horror movies, but I get to be more interactive with it.
Absolutely. For some reason, that made me think of, what do you think causes the inherent fascination people have with abandoned towns, with abandoned shopping malls, amusement parks? Like, there's something even for people who aren't, you know, naturally drawn to horror,
Yeah.
there's something that's like humans once lived here, families were once happy here.
Mhm.
I think honestly that's what bothered me originally about going and driving through Centralia when the sun was still up. Like it was like traffic passes through there fairly often, like at least that time of night. And it's just like but there's no families.
Yeah.
And it feels hollow and empty and
Mhm.
I'm in a nice or in one way I'm almost glad that it was just the coal fire and I think it's projected to burn for another 300 years, but don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere in the hundreds range. And it's just like and it bothered me like seeing again that blacktop skeleton of just there's it's the past tense. It is past tense in reality. There's no buildings.
Well, and I think a lot of people in Pennsylvania don't realize how much it's mined out. Like when I was
yeah.
looking on the maps for this house when I was buying it, one of my friends said make sure that it's not on an area that's already been mined out, and I am on this like little island in my neighborhood that has not been.
Ooh.
It's weird. Like I'm on solid ground, but like around a couple of the blocks around me are not.
So does that render the foundations of the houses unstable?
I think they are more likely to shift because it doesn't tell you how high up it goes, just that there is undermining.
Oh, jeez.
So I was very thankful when I found out that mine had not been undermined, but it means I could get that moat I've always wanted in a very unfortunate way for my neighbors. But so, what about other places that you would like to visit? Are there any other abandoned ones nearby that would be worthwhile?
If I somehow manage to drag you to Canada, as I keep saying it, I know your restrictions, but that aforementioned empty house that's all boarded up by the cottage, because seeing that at night in the light of headlights, goodness gracious, it's right next to the road. People walk by it all the time. It's just there's something very neat about seeing abandoned property in the middle of cottage country where there really aren't a lot of people to start with, let alone full-time residents. So if you're there in the off season, no traffic at all, no people, things start to feel a little Walking Dead-ish. How about you?
There's an abandoned PA turnpike that's supposed to be pretty decent. You can kind of climb through all these different parts. I think it's another one where it's labeled like no trespassing. Whatever, you do what you want. Because I've seen a bajillion pictures of people going in there. It might be a like one of those engage at your own risk kind of places, like we are not liable. But we'll see. We'll see what signs come up and how many state troopers are nearby. That's always a factor.
Especially if it's in the middle of nowhere, which it sounds
like
it is.
It depends. I think a lot of these, they just don't even want to bother to maintain them, and that goes for the government too. If they kind of figure if you hurt yourself, you were a dumbass.
Basically. And also, yeah, I can imagine state troopers and stuff, they have much better things to do with their time than patrol a lonely stretch of highway where, honestly, why would anyone fucking go out there?
Unless there's something important out there, or actually dangerous. I think you really do have to worry about private property owners more.
Yes.
I can't guarantee that, but if you are in a place the government doesn't really want you to be, it depends on what level of don't want you to be there that it actually is.
And I think with staying on stretches of highway, like close to Centralia's main stretch of thoroughfare there or abandoned highway, I feel like if you stay on the highway, like you're probably going to be okay, but I feel like the further back you go, if that abandoned stretch of highway stretches, back into like heavily forested area, for example, that's where things are starting to get dicey. And as you said earlier, the guns that have guns out here.
Oh yeah.
So it's a matter of, do you really want to play with that fire? And as soon as we upload this, I absolutely anticipate that the state's going to be like, hey! But no, I think also just, while I'm all for exploring abandoned places and taking pictures and all that amazing stuff, one of the things that I worry about is just going in there and doing what you want. As cheesy as it sounds, but it was a phrase that stuck out to me from going out to Yellowstone as a kid, is leave only footprints. Because it is nature now, and animals live there, and just don't spray paint everything. Like, guys, Centralia, that still depresses me.
Most places, a good rule of thumb is leave it better than you found it.
Yeah, that's also a good way.
And I get annoyed at people who break things so others can't enjoy them.
Yeah,
Like, let me be as creeped out as you were.
exactly.
Don't ruin it with, like, a dick butt on the side of a wall that just kind of takes the ambiance out of it for me.
And also introducing those types of toxins into the local environment, like you're impacting more than just, visitors after you. Like it's local wildlife. It's just, you know, I feel like with abandoned towns and stuff, there is something to be said for honoring the memories of the people who lived there before.
Mm-hmm.
Those families may very well still be alive, hopefully, and they're thriving in Philadelphia for all we know. But it's just like enjoy it and then tell other people about it, and you can have fun there without ruining it.
Yeah.
I feel like the state would not mind so much if people just
if people weren't stupid, if people actually took care and did their best to not get injured and not damage the property, most people probably wouldn't care. I imagine that a lot of the reasons the people who own this property want you to keep out is because other idiots did it before and they broke things.
And then if you're the owner of the property, I would assume you're liable for certain things. Like if
someone
injured on your property,
if they injure themselves on your property, I think if it's posted clearly, it's way less likely you'll be charged for it. But if they were already trespassing and they hurt themselves, I guess it depends on how good your lawyer is. But yeah, I think that's why you see so many postings.
Well, good for them, honestly. Yeah. Because again, I'd love to go back out to Centralia, and I'm sure there's other abandoned mining towns in PA that I'd absolutely love to visit. But when you go out there, you are going out there with your own risk. When I was a teenager, I got to go to Ricketts Glen, which is this beautiful campground back east, and it has this great trail, which is 2.5 miles down and 2.5 miles uphill. But it's almost like a staircase, and all of the stairs are waterfalls. That hike, you see 27 of them. They're absolutely beautiful, and I was dead on my feet by the end of it, but I'd happily do it anytime. There's signs everywhere that says, don't jump off the falls, you will get injured. Literally everywhere. I cannot tell you how many deaths they have there every single year. And I'm like, do you not realize that the massive boulders that are most likely at the bottoms of these waterfalls right beneath the surface? Like, I remember being 12 and being in a national park, and there was bison. Even then, I knew that thing can probably kill me. Let's stay away from it.
Yeah.
That basic thinking, and again, don't ruin it for everybody else. Like, I feel like just having that more present mindset when you go out to, like, national parks or abandoned areas, just don't be a dick.
Just think of how much you'd be pissed if somebody ruined it before you got there.
Yes.
And just have a little bit of empathy.
Exactly.
There's plenty of places where people don't care if you wreck things. But keep it in mind. Just don't be a jerk. All right. I think that's a good note to end this.
Yep.
Thank you for listening. We have a Facebook, and what else do we have? We have a Facebook and a Podbean. Generally, anywhere you want to find us is just to type in "It Began in the Basement" of the search bar of anywhere you are, and there's a good chance you'll find us.
Okay.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.